So the thought for today is, why are EV owners so unhappy? And it kind of takes me back to, I had a really stressful job. You know, why would people want a smelly old diesel or a petrol? I hate it when they do that. Sorry. So I'm a big kid. Sue me. I had a really stressful job. Unfortunately, I worked about an hour away from home. So on the way home at night, I could kind of cool down. So long as somebody didn't cut me up on the motorway, I could calm down. But before that, I had another really stressful job and I didn't live too far away. So my only hope was to leave work, not bump into anybody I knew. And I went to such an extent of not bumping into anybody I knew. I had an electric garage door fitted that I could press the button when I was entering the close, and as I was nearing the garage door, I'd press the button again and it would start going down already behind me, and I'd time it so I could just get my car underneath. All my neighbours, very cheerful, lovely people, but I didn't want to speak to them when I was coming home from work. Not until I'd put my leathers on, my helmet, got on my fire blade, opened the garage door and shot out like, what was that guy? What did he use? I'm just trying to remember. Was it Street Hawk?
The man, the machine, Street Hawk.
And I'd go out for a blast on my motorbike. Now, I had a nice car then. I had a Mercedes Benz, but it was an E220 diesel, not very fast. Lovely car to drive, to go round in. Eat the miles up, but it wasn't particularly exciting. My Fireblade, that was exciting. And I'd go out on my Fireblade and I'd come back, I'd feel like a new man. Now, can you imagine if you had an EV and then you jumped into an E220 diesel, you think, wow, this is good, and it'd put you in a good mood. That's what you need to do. Instead of knocking all this money off EVs, they should give them a free motorbike, and then perhaps they wouldn't be so fucking miserable. So this chap here, he's messaged me before, and to be honest, he's been really ageist and nasty before. He's just a nasty person, that's all it can be. Or he could just be miserable because he's got an EV, and that does seem to be the common denominator amongst all these people. I'll just go through some of these because they're really funny. So this chap, Chris, High Peak Chris, he's been in a discussion with this Cortho UK, and he's put my name. Cortho, we've crossed paths. An old embittered car dealer ranting into the ether about registrations, not sales, isn't the compelling argument you think it might be. Fair enough. And of course, he tagged me in, and I've put, I wonder why EV people are so ageist. When I was young, I was taught to respect my elders. The trouble is that all these fanatical EV supporters are obnoxious, and even though I drive an EV, they make me not want to. Sadly, they are part of the problem and not part of the solution. As far as embittered, I've had a great life. Oh, I've put live. I've had a great live in the motor trade, and it's you that comes across as embittered. Me, I don't mind EVs, I just hate layers. That's the truth. Whether you believe it or not, that's the truth. And he's come back to me because usually it's older people whittering on about EVs being awful. Oh, luckily, I'll only need another 10 years of motoring. I'll never own an EV. That's why respect is earned, not presumed. If I went through all the things I've done in the motor trade, all the good things, you'd think I was blowing my own trumpet, but I have. I'm quite happy. My contribution to the motor trade, it's not just me doing this about EVs. I've been exactly the same with people getting ripped off with ICE cars, with write-offs, trying to make it better, trying to make it better for my colleagues, easier for my colleagues. I've been like that all my life. It's just in my DNA. So it's not just about EVs. Whether you think it is or not, I'm trying to do it for the good of customers, for the good of the motor trade. And people like this, they're just, well, look, just have a look what I've got to put up with. He then goes on to say, that it's not me replying to him, it's this High Peak Chris, or her useless. Tell that to the fact their average annual mileage in the UK market is now higher than diesels, 8,900 versus 8,000, unless they aren't as useless as thought. Well, the company cars, the people who are buying EVs are buying them because they get massive tax relief. Doing all these miles, these company people, what the firms don't seem to realise is they're paying them for sitting in the car, having a kip, while the vehicle's charging on a motorway service station. So I'm not sure they've thought that through, and I'm not sure Cortho has thought it through either. But they are unsuitable and useless except to very specific people who use them in specific circumstances. I would agree with that. Just did a 400-mile round trip in mine. Easy. What's your lived experience of them to draw that conclusion? Now, that's not the win you think it is, Cortho, because I remember many, many years ago, I was going out with the PA to the boss. Coincidentally, we both booked our 2-week summer holiday off at the same time. And the first day, the first morning, we'd gone up to Rivington Pike, walked up to the top, and we're sat at the top of Rivington Pike. And I'm thinking, I've got 2 weeks of this. So I said to her, do you fancy going on holiday? So she said, where to? And I said, well, I like the south of France. So she said, okay. So we walked back down Rivington Pike, drove back to our respective houses, packed a suitcase each, and then I drove to Dover. Got the hovercraft over from Dover to Calais and drove from Calais to the south of France. That was it. The only thinking I had to do was, where did I put my trunks? I haven't seen them for ages. And get them in my suitcase. Then I chucked it in the back of my car, filled up with fuel, went, and it's an unremarkable thought to me because I've done it several times. And the other thing that might be remarkable to you is the car that I was using at the time was a 4-speed Opel Record Berliner, except it didn't have third gear. Wouldn't go into third gear at all. So I drove here to the south of France and back, and several hundred, if not 1,000 miles while I was in the south of France in a petrol car with only 3 gears. Just did a 400-mile round trip in mine. Easy. What's your lived experience of them to draw that conclusion? Last week, I went to pick my mate up at Luton Airport, as I've said before, and I drove from here to Luton Airport. Then I took him to a wine tasting in London. New hotel opening. They want to sell his wines. So I'd got the wines in the back of the car, picked him up at Luton, drove to London, did the wine tasting, they showed us around the new hotel, and then I drove back to Preston. We did stop once for Kentucky Fried Chicken. While we were eating our Kentucky Fried Chicken inside, there was a chap plugging his EV in. We could see him. He plugs it in, gets it all done, and then he's tapping and messing about with the plug and unlocking and locking his car. Wouldn't charge. So I had to move to the next one. While he was plugging his car into the charger, we'd been to the loo, eaten our Kentucky Fried Chicken, had a Starbucks, and he was still messing about with his car. Then I just jumped in mine, didn't need filling up. I did the whole trip on one tank and still had fuel left. That's how unremarkable I think I did 470 miles that day. That's how unremarkable doing 400 miles in an EV is. But it's even worse than that, because then this guy, Chris, without a charge halfway, bullshit. Cortho. Yeah, I charged overnight at my destination. So it's not a round trip, is it? Because he stopped overnight to charge. I charged overnight at my destination, went to stay with friends, so 200 each way, easy. It is charged again now, while I slept, ready for another long trip. 200-mile long trip, you must be joking, if I wanted to. But today I'm working from home. So, many years ago, a chap ordered an Opel Record Berliner from us, and it was a diesel. He lived in Portugal. He had to fill in an import licence, and he got it wrong. But the car was there and he wanted it. So he couldn't come and pick it up. And I had to go. So I drove in his Opel Record Berliner to Cherbourg. I went across on the ferry, and it was the worst crossing, apparently, for 25 years. Got to Cherbourg, and I checked in whatever hotel it was. And then I rang my girlfriend, and she said, "Are you not coming round tonight?" I said, "I'm in Cherbourg." "Oh, right. So you're not coming then?" The guy had a Ford Capri as a part exchange. Went out my hotel room, jumped in the Ford Capri, and then I drove back to Preston, including the crossing. As I say, it's unremarkable. Those 2 trips, well, those kind of 4 trips, I wouldn't have been able to do if I'd have got an EV. You just couldn't do it because there's too much. The logistical problems of charging on the way and making sure you don't run out, they're just too much at the moment. An EV's fine for me, but I've also got a petrol. This stupid survey that's out by ZapMap that the REC and all the evangelists have retweeted and repeated and regurgitated, that only 3% of EV owners would go back to a petrol or an ICE car. But that's not actually what it says, because in that survey there's dual fuel households. Some have an ICE car and an EV. When they asked them about their EV usage, only 90% of the EV owners said they used it round town. 90%. And then, to make it even worse, they specifically excluded long journeys. They had to specifically exclude that, because 100% of them would have said, "No, I don't use my EV, I'll go with my diesel." They're what we call in the motor trade closed questions, where you have to answer yes to, or you get a positive response, or you get the response that you want. You phrase the question in a way that you get an answer that you want. Still not finished there, because again, what they didn't tell you is 3% said, "Yeah, we'd definitely go back." But there was 13 or 14% said, "Yeah, they'd consider it." Well, 13 or 14% is not a lot. This is from ZapMap's customers, 3,976 from ZapMap's customers who are currently driving an EV. If you ask people who are still driving an EV and who would actually respond to a questionnaire about EVs, then they're part of the cult. If I had an EV and I was fed up with it, and no, I wouldn't be responding. It's like I've just got an email from Luke, re-partnership proposal for Barrie Crampton's channel. "Hey, just following up to see if you had a chance to look at my message. Thanks." one before. Hi Barry, I just wanted to see if you had any thoughts about the suggestions I sent over. It would be great to hear what you think. Please let me know if I can help you in any way. Hey Barry, do you need a video editor for your channel? Here's an example of my work. If you like my example video and you want to increase your views, let me know and I can become your editor too. Now, if I wanted him, I'd have been straight back on. But I don't. So I haven't responded. And he's still, to his credit, he's still kept going. But I don't want it. And I don't want to waste my time sending him an email because I've got other stuff to do. I'm far too busy editing my own thumbnails. So you see, you would not answer if you... All I'm trying to say is, when you see the headline, only 3% would go back to a nice vehicle, that is absolute rubbish. They know it's rubbish. They phrase the questions in a way that makes it rubbish. And then all the idiot evangelists have jumped on the bandwagon with just garbage. And the thing is that they know that we know that they're lying. But they still do it, just in case some gullible idiot thinks it's true and then goes and buys an EV. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.